Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. BC's toxic drug crisis claims more lives.
We lost 315 people in downtown Eastside, but we lost almost 2,000 people elsewhere in BC, and some of our smallest communities have the highest rate of death.
And in a rare instance, 2 people have died inside an overdose prevention site. Plus, BC's top doctor on what needs to change.
It's been decades and 100 years, if you think about it, in some areas of prohibitionist drug policy that has led to what we are doing right now.
The added challenges of housing and poverty. And rising incidents of hate during the pandemic.
I want to see funding, I want to see resources, I want to see action invested to our community-led initiative.
The painful findings and how to fight it.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Anita is away tonight. BC's toxic drug crisis grinds on with painful familiarity, killing almost 7 people every day in January. The latest coroner's report found 211 toxic drug deaths in the first month of 2023. It is the second deadliest January in the past decade, only behind last year when 216 people were killed. Of those who died, 77% were men, and the majority of the deaths were in the Vancouver Coastal Health and Fraser Health regions. And in a rare instance, 2 of the people killed by poison drugs recently died at an overdose prevention site. The CBC's Angela Starrett has more on the calls to try to save more lives.
The tragic part of the whole thing is that these deaths could have been prevented.
Guy Felicella has been in recovery for almost 10 years. He says he was brought back to life 6 times.
You lose words of sadness for people and families and communities across the province. It's just truly heartbreaking and ongoing, and it'll continue to go this way until we actually, compete with the illicit drug supply.
We are clearly still in the midst of this crisis.
Chief Coroner Elisa Lapointe says if things don't change drastically, BC's on track to lose another 2,300 people across the province.
We lost 315 people in downtown Eastside, but we lost almost 2,000 people elsewhere in BC.
Lapointe says fentanyl remains the main driver of the crisis, found in up to 85% of all deaths. And for the first time, 2 people died at an overdose prevention site, one in 2022 and one in 2023.
When all of the tens of thousands of visits to overdose prevention sites that we've seen in the province, we've now experienced 2 deaths. And I think it's probably it's more surprising that we haven't seen more given the toxicity of the supply. But I think it really speaks to how valuable those services are.
Apart from Vancouver, Terrace, Merritt, Hope and Prince George have the highest rates of deaths in terms of health authorities. And those dying are not just people considered vulnerable.
More than half of these deaths are occurring in private residences. They're occurring all around the province.
In 2022, 83% of toxic drug deaths occurred indoors, 55% in private residences, while 15% happened outside in vehicles, sidewalks, streets, and parks. As for any change,
I think that the quickest thing that we can do to start reducing deaths tomorrow is to provide a regulated alternative to a very volatile and unpredictable drug supply. That alone will continue to be insufficient until we invest in other strategies like treatment and like upstream prevention.
The province is still investigating the 2 deaths in the supervised consumption sites. Angela Starrett, CBC News, Vancouver.
The BC government is rolling out hundreds of millions of dollars to boost food bank system and agricultural production as more people ask for help in BC. Premier David Eby says $200 million will go toward adding commercial coolers at food banks and improve overall food production and access. Eby says the money will give growers a chance to expand their businesses and allow more BC-produced food to be eaten here. Part of the money will also be used to fund climate preparedness plans.
For many people, and myself included, we're not going to forget those images of roads washed out and stranded farm animals and farms underwater. What those disasters did was essentially cut off the movement of people and goods between BC's coast and the rest of the country.
The funding is part of the province's plan to spend its massive surplus, estimated last fall at almost $6 billion. We've seen the videos and heard the disturbing accounts. Now a new report from BC's Human Rights Commission has revealed a disturbing rise in hate and discrimination during the COVID-19 pandemic. The commissioner says the government's response was ineffective. Susanna Da Silva now on those targeted and what's being done to fight back.
Trixie Ling says that moment 3 years ago when a man called her racial slurs and spat on her was life-changing.
That really woke me up. I think that was the catalyst for me to be really angry and to not be silent, to talk about it. They started sharing, this is what...
It motivated her to start a charity helping immigrant women.
I want to see funding, I want to see resources, I want to see action invested to our community-led initiative.
Ling's was one of hundreds of hate crimes reported to police during the pandemic, believed to be a fraction of the crimes that actually occurred.
Overall, hate incidents reported to the police have increased 118%.
Hate of all kinds went up across the country, with BC seeing some of the most dramatic increases, including a sharp rise of anti-Asian hate, up 482%.
While hate is not new, the pandemic marks a period in our collective experience that's been filled with fear, mistrust, division, and hate.
The report calls on the provincial government to create a more coordinated response, the police and courts to do more in terms of prosecutions, and for more education in schools.
Ever met a rabbi before? Wow, that's okay. I'm it.
As the report was released, a group called The Other People, representing several ethnic and religious backgrounds, was in a Vancouver high school. The man behind the group says the report didn't go far enough.
Racism is not going to be dealt with words, slogans, or posters. We need to have specifics as to how to break down, which is why we're here, because we want the students to meet a Muslim, to meet a Sikh, a Jew, a black individual, and so on, face to face.
It was a message that resonated.
Just really learning to take the time to educate ourselves and to call people out and not be afraid to call people out, make a stand.
And that is the only way advocates say change is going to happen. Susanna Da Silva, CBC News, Vancouver.
The provincial government has now introduced new legislation requiring employers to be transparent about pay. The province says the change, due to be law in the next few years, is the first phase towards pay equity legislation. But as Mira Baines reports, some advocates say the bill lacks the power to truly level the playing field for women in the workplace.
I know that people are concerned about whether or not there are teeth.
Kelly Padden, Parliamentary Secretary for Gender Equity, says as of November 1st, all employers will be required to include salary or wage ranges on job ads. She says the gender pay gap in BC has men making 17% more than women. Under the legislation, employers won't be able to ask employees for their pay history or punish workers who talk about their pay with others.
Discriminating based on gender is not legal in British Columbia. Highlighting the information that would potentially demonstrate that or demonstrate areas of opportunity to improve is critical.
Some fear the system of transparency puts the onus on women to push for equal pay and suffer potential repercussions. Advocates point out employees have to fight for higher wages by filing a claim with the BC Human Rights Tribunal. This economist says the law should go further and ensure employers provide equal pay.
Do it in the right order. This is not the first step. The right order is to have a way for people to be able to do something with the information, which is what pay equity would do.
Gender equity legislation was briefly enacted in BC in 2001, but was later rolled back by the BC Liberals. The party tried to introduce their own gender equity bill 6 times since. Each one failed. Now the party says a mechanism is needed to be in place for accountability.
Penalties and fines that could be used, but there are also just a centralized system where you can actually have all of those listings of who's doing well and who has yet to meet the standards.
Employers will be required to publicly post reports on their gender pay gap in a phased process according to workplace size. Mira Baines, CBC News, Victoria.
The province's move to protect people, especially minors, from having their intimate images shared online, as we told you yesterday, is being applauded by some childhood psychologists, including one high school counselor who spoke with CBC Radio's The Early Edition this morning. Danielle Lynn says while the proposed law offers better recourse for anyone who's had their image shared without their permission, young victims often face complicated challenges.
It's about the guilt, the shame, the acceptance that they're going to feel, or even the rejection amongst their peers. And they believe it's the biggest mistake that they've made in life.
You can hear more from Lynn's interview on The Early Edition by using the CBC Listen app. The City of Surrey has now appointed a new ethics commissioner. Lawyer Peter Johnson will take on that independent role. Johnson previously served as the city's interim ethics commissioner after it was introduced in 2020. The role includes investigating complaints and making disciplinary recommendations to council. Still with municipal affairs, tonight teams of volunteers are hitting the streets across Metro Vancouver as part of the 2023 homeless count. It is the first such count in 3 years after pandemic cancellations. Justin McElroy joins us now with more. Justin, first of all, what can we expect from this year's count?
Well, about the only certainty, Dan, is that the number of people counted will go up. As you said, this is the first time that this count has happened in 3 years. It's happening in communities all across Metro Vancouver over the next 2 days from the North Shore to Langley. And the last time it was done was right before the pandemic hit. And we've heard since then time again from governments, and we've seen it on the streets, on how the number of people on the streets has risen in that time for all sorts of reasons. So let's take a look at the baseline from what people will be comparing to. And you can see rose slowly over the last decade, then got down a little bit, but just over 2,000 people were counted in Vancouver. That's about 1 in 35 residents in the city in 2020. About 75% of them sheltered homeless. Sometimes they live in different buildings. A quarter of them categorized as unsheltered homeless. So again, this is happening not just in Vancouver, but in the North Shore, Langley's, plenty of other communities, as well as across British Columbia over the next 3 months as well. All sorts of questions being asked that give people and governments a sense of exactly who these people are and where they came from.
And from that policy standpoint, Justin, why is this count important?
Well, it helps inform a lot of the decisions that are made. It helps inform a lot of the debates that happen, and it helps inform questions on whether all municipalities have the resources that they need to in order to help tackle these issues in their communities. And just one example is the number of units for emergency housing in different municipalities. And if you take a look at this chart, this is what it was last year. There's lots of homeless people in lots of different communities in Metro Vancouver, but Vancouver has the lion's share of actual units where folks come towards. So one Vancouver councillor says the data from this will hopefully show that lots of municipalities have lots of different work to do when they look at this data.
We know the problem is severe. We know the urgent need for this housing and that it needs to be both in Vancouver and across the whole region. We need to continue to do more in Vancouver, and we need local governments around the region to step up and do more as well.
The information gathered over the next 2 days will provide a lot of data to a lot of different stakeholders, but the question always with data is what you do after that. That's going to be the question for governments after they get this.
Okay, Justin McElroy, thanks very much.
Thanks, Dan.
To other news now, transit service in parts of the Fraser Valley will once again be unavailable later this week amid more job action.
Drivers are hopeful that we're going to get a fair deal at the end of this, and they're excited to finally be seeing something get done. We've been without a contract for 3 years now, so it's a long time coming to start getting something done.
Between Thursday and Saturday, there will be no service in Agassiz Harrison, the Central Fraser Valley, Chilliwack, and Hope. But Handy Dart will still run. Job action began in February, with drivers refusing to collect fares to back demands for higher wages, a pension plan, and better working conditions. The union hopes to reach an agreement with US-based First Transit, which is contracted by BC Transit to provide service in the region. Last week, bus service was halted for 2 days. A new report suggests Vancouver doesn't have enough hotel rooms to keep up with demand, and it could cost BC billions in missed revenue. The city's tourism board fears that supply crunch could prevent the city from hosting future sports events and big conferences. As John Hernandez shows us, City Council vows to buck that trend.
Vancouver is no stranger to hosting big international events, but visitors have fewer options when it comes to booking a hotel room than they did in 2010.
We're net negative 1,500 rooms since the Olympics.
A Destination Vancouver analysis of hotel rooms in the region says demand during peak tourism season is poised to outstrip supply by 2026, and the result could be costly.
If we continue on the current path that we are right now, lack of hotel rooms will cost us about $30 billion in direct and indirect impact up to 2050.
The Tourism Board says the pandemic put even more strain on supply, with several hotels being transformed into supportive housing. Now the hope is to build up capacity, especially with international conferences and major events like the 2026 FIFA World Cup just around the corner.
Without accommodations, people can't stay, they can't spend. And if that doesn't happen, then that business goes somewhere else.
City Council admits building up supply will take time, but believes a revitalized Granville Entertainment District could be part of the solution.
We recognize the dire shortage of hotel rooms, and so Council has directed staff to receive and accept applications for new hotels now, while that planning process is happening.
The city's Broadway plan has also opened up the door for more hotels along the corridor, with hopes that they could take pressure off the use of Airbnbs.
What you want to do is keep that local housing stock for locals in a very tight market. You don't want to see people renting it out for Airbnb.
As it stands, about 1,100 hotel rooms are in the city's development pipeline, but there's no guarantees they'll be ready for the international crowds expected in 2026. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Time for our first peek at the weather with Amy Bell, here with a model of consistency of some description.
Yes, you like today? Great, because tomorrow's the same, and the day after.
Just take it.
Take the sun when we get it, and warmer temperatures. Getting our little hints of spring. Things are starting to blossom a little bit. We're done with last week's snow. It's still left over in some parking lots, but we definitely are seeing things warming up, and we'll see the clock jumping ahead this weekend, and that means we'll have those nice after-dinner daylight hours, so that's good news. 6 degrees at the airport, 9 in Pitt Meadows, 8 out in the Abbotsford area, 4 in Hope, so still quite chilly as you're heading out that area of the Fraser Valley. Now, yes, as promised, a couple of nice days. What we're going to see, though, is the same pattern we saw today and yesterday. So, yes, very consistent with increasing cloud in the overnight hours, and then early morning, sort of overnight, early morning, we have that risk of some light showers. We saw that happen today and yesterday. We will likely see it tomorrow, but then we brighten up and we see all the sunshine in the afternoon. Tomorrow, we get up to 9 degrees. Repeat, we see some showers moving in for Wednesday night into Thursday. Thursday, that's the one to get outside if you can and hit a patio, because we've got sunshine coming for the afternoon, up to about 11 degrees. And then we see increasing cloud Thursday night, and Friday, we get into the rain. We just cut that temperature in half. We'll see a high of about 5. We get into this rain with this next system, and that's going to keep us wet right through the weekend and into next week.
Okay, so patio before. You heard her, folks.
Get out there.
Thanks, Amy. It has been one day since the Prime Minister tried to cool things off over China's attempts to meddle in Canadian elections. The opposition, though, is firing back with some of its harshest critiques yet. Ashley Burke brings us the raucous back and forth as the Conservatives lead the charge against the Liberals over an issue that has unsettled many Canadians and left the government playing defense.
The leader of the opposition taking his attacks to a new level.
It is actually incredible that we have this uprising at our intelligence body.
Blaming the Prime Minister for intelligence leaks around Chinese election meddling.
They are so concerned about how the Prime Minister is acting against Canada's interests and in favor of a foreign dictatorship's interests that they are actually releasing this information publicly.
Order! Pierre Poilievre and his party amping up their attacks as well in the House of Commons.
It's burying the truth in process. Why?
Openly mocking the government's plan to appoint a special rapporteur to examine foreign interference.
Rapporteur, a fake new position that they have invented. Rapporteur,
Does it come with a costume? Maybe a cape and a sword?
We didn't need another reason to see that the leader of the opposition has never taken this issue seriously. Never.
Conservatives also dismissing Trudeau's plans for a committee of parliamentarians, all with top secret clearance, to conduct a review of their own.
He announced that a secret committee with secret hearings will hear secret evidence and then give the Prime Minister a secret conclusion. When will he call a public inquiry and tell everybody what he's hiding?
Is this truly what the Conservatives have resorted to now, denigrating the very institutions that are there to protect our democracy? Is that all they have to offer?
Poilievre said his MPs won't boycott that review. Other parties say they'll also take part.
We will be part of every and any process that will anyhow contribute to protect our democracy.
Don Davies will participate, of course, but we want to be clear, we don't think that's sufficient.
What they want is a public inquiry, but Trudeau has now outsourced the decision on whether or not to call one to that special rapporteur.
The special rapporteur will be there to ensure that Canada has all the mechanisms and tools necessary.
BC's toxic drug crisis was declared a public health emergency in 2016. 8 years later, hundreds of people still die every month. After the break, we sit down with BC's top doctor on this grinding crisis. Stick around. And hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream. Thanks for being here. In PEI, a newly opened outdoor rink has many people excited. CBC reporter Stacey Janzer stopped by to meet the skaters, some of whom are trying it out for the first time.
We heard that there's a free skating rink and I haven't tried it before yet, so we just want to enjoy it.
I love going on the ice with all my friends.
Actually, this is my first time skating, so I'm trying to practice all around here, and it's really nice that it's for free and we can just go here and skate all around all day.
In the Philippines, we only have skating rinks in the malls, so seeing here at the park, it's very nice. At least they can practice the skating. This is our first winter in PEI, so we're just, enjoying every bit of it. So the kids are having fun. They just started learning to skate.
If someone's starting out fresh on the ice, what's something that they should know to do?
Bend your knees to keep your balance. Always wear a helmet when you're just starting.
I'm still trying to practice my balance and just doing all of it all over again. So just to, get my balance, get my form.
How'd the first time go? It was not as easy as it looks. It's really hard. So I need more practice.
Back to our top story now. BC's deadly toxic drug crisis took 211 more lives in January. That's almost 7 people every day. Earlier this week, reporter Leanne Young sat down with BC's provincial health officer, Dr. Bonnie Henry, to talk about the state of the crisis. And worth noting, this interview was done before the release of the latest coroner's report.
It is a very different type of crisis, and it is a reflection of a lot of things in our society that have been going on for a long time. So it's rooted in colonialism, it's rooted in poverty, it's rooted in social disconnection and racism and other societal things that need to change. And it's exacerbated by the fact that we don't have a very strong coordinated mental health and substance use support system. And when we declared the public health emergency, my predecessor, Dr. Perry Kendall, in 2016, and I was part of that, and we did have regular updates. We continue to have regular updates. One of the biggest reasons for declaring an emergency across the province was to build that recognition that this was people, these were our community, our family, people across the province. It wasn't just the downtown east side. And that has been a big challenge because obviously people in the downtown east side have been dramatically affected by this. I think it has been really difficult for politicians to wrap their heads around these are people and the whole stigma, and it's been decades and 100 years, if you think about it, in some areas of prohibitionist drug policy that has led to what we are doing right now and what we are experiencing right now. And that's where things like decriminalization of people who use drugs is an incredible thing. One of the things that has been so difficult for us in public health who've been working on the toxic drug crises was seeing how things got so much worse in terms of the toxicity of the drug supply. Wasn't only people who in the downtown east side or in some of the other communities, but we've seen now a dramatic increase in overdose, in toxic drug deaths in young men, 30 to 59, many of whom are at home, they have jobs, their families don't know that they were using or that they'd relapsed into using drugs again. Things got dramatically worse through this pandemic.
We were in the downtown east side the day that the decriminalization of people who use drugs, that policy came into effect, and I met a young woman by the name of Carrie, and she is one of those people that has been asking for help. So she's not afraid to ask for help, but here's a little bit of her story.
I don't drink, I don't smoke cigarettes, I smoke pot and I take fentanyl. Yeah. I also get my medications from my doctor that I get prescribed to me, but it's not quite enough once I had that fentanyl in my system, not by choice. Like I would never ever in my life would be like, oh, I just want to go get high on heroin or fentanyl or whatever. I just need a powder. I was hit by an e-bike. I was just walking in the grocery store and I was hit, and I had to smash my chin up and hyperextended my arm and had a hole in my leg right here. Whoops. And
so they had you on painkillers?
Yeah. Oh, major. Yeah. They had me on IV fentanyl, and I just had a hard time stopping because I'm in pain and I'm homeless. Essentially, I don't want to take anything. Like, I just want them to fix me.
I just want them to fix me. So you seeing that, she's not afraid to ask for help. She's, homeless, she's sick, but she still has a lot of hope. So she wants next year to become a poverty law advocate. That's her goal. She wants to be golfing again. She was a professional competitive figure skater for a number of years, so her life has changed dramatically. You see Carrie, what do you think is the help that Carrie needs now?
Yeah, I see a whole lot of things. One, I was happy to hear that she was getting some prescribed supply from her doctor. That's a way to help balance it so that she's not exposed to the toxicity of the drugs on the street as much. So that's a good thing. But there's a whole number of things here. She talks about poverty. She talks about being homeless. So we know it's not just about the medical part of things. What she needs is a safe place to live. I think this idea that people are using drugs to get high is is not, it's not reality. It's, there's a whole lot of reasons why people like Carrie end up where she is, and we have to do, we need to think about it in terms of housing, in terms of basic income, in terms of having a respected healthcare provider that she can have a relationship with over time.
And so in your role, what is the one thing the biggest thing that you're advocating for right now as we look to the toxic drug crisis?
The things that I've been working on, of course, there's not one, but the one thing that I'm trying to push more, a little bit more on is we're doing a report that will be coming out in the coming months on a vision for safer supply that will meet some of the needs of communities across the province. So we've started in a limited way with prescribed safer supply, but it's not available in enough places.
You know, it's a 3-year term. Do you think we'll actually see a difference within this pilot program?
Yeah, you know what, I cannot see us going back from this. What we need to do is ensure that it is implemented, that we take that criminal justice system out of people's lives who are using drugs for whatever reason it is that they are using them, so that they have the agency and the ability to connect, to meet some of these needs that people have, and to without the stigma and the shame of being labeled a criminal.
Lots to think about.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bonnie Henry, for being with us today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you for having me.
A group of Americans driving into Mexico last week caught in the crossfire of cartels and kidnapped. 2 are now dead. More details after this.
I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed it's going to court.
That's Marty McSorley's reaction to the news he now faces a criminal charge of assault with a weapon.
I don't really know if anybody knows right now how much I've already lost, in a sense of just not having the right to play.
The announcement was made in Victoria this afternoon.
The same standard was applied here as we apply in any other case. That being, first, is there a substantial likelihood of conviction? And having reviewed the evidence, we agree that there is. At that stage, we move to the second part of the test, which is the public interest. Is it in the public interest to prosecute? And again, Crown Counsel is of the view that yes, it is in the public interest.
It was February 21st. With just seconds left in the game between Boston and Vancouver, McSorley took his stick to the temple of the Canucks' Donald Brashear. Brashear fell to the ice, bleeding and unconscious. Doctors diagnosed him with a serious concussion.
I just live day by day, and I'm not allowed to work out for the first 2 weeks. No exercise at all.
McSorley has apologized, and the NHL has suspended him for the rest of the season, including the playoffs. It's widely expected this will put an end to the 36-year-old hockey veteran's career. The NHL has issued a written statement. Chief Legal Officer Bill Daly said, "We believe the league dealt with the matter quickly, decisively, and appropriately, and did not feel that any further action was either warranted or necessary. We therefore would have preferred that the Crown not take this action. Having said that, the Vancouver authorities have made their decision, and we remain committed to offering our full cooperation in any way we can."
And we all hope that that was the end of it. You know, I just hope it works out for Marty, because he really is a great guy, and he's done a lot for hockey.
Reaction on the street is mixed.
I'm a hockey player. What happens on the ice stays on the ice, I think.
I think the court should find the guy, you know, and then make him face what he's done, you know, because if I walked up the street and hit him with a stick, you better believe that I'm going to go to jail for it, right? So if I could go to jail for it, so should he.
This is not the first time the league has suspended McSorley, but it is the first time he's faced criminal charges. He's expected to make his first appearance in Vancouver Provincial Court, April 4th. Bonnie Fox, CBC News, Vancouver.
A BC First Nation now has a say over part of Canada's biggest fossil fuel deposit. It's a source of natural gas so large, environmentalists call it a carbon bomb, named for the scale of climate disruption they say it could cause. With the eyes of the world glued to what's happened next, Tara Carman traveled to the Blueberry River First Nation in BC's north for an in-depth look at the damage already done and to ask community leaders how they will use their influence.
The tranquility, peacefulness, and vastness of northern BC seems untouched. But just below the surface, almost 20,000 wells have left their mark. This is Canada's largest fossil fuel reserve and home to a small First Nation.
Nearly all of Blueberry River First Nation is within 250 meters of an industrial disturbance, like this one. And with all of this untapped fossil fuel underneath us, energy companies want in.
You ladies picked the coldest day of the year.
Yep.
Jerry Davis and Wayne Yahe have watched the oil and gas industry change their land.
Oil and gas was always here, but at the turn of the 90s, that's when it just ramped up. You know, in the last 5 years, you know, I barely even see any wildlife. It's slowly taken away.
Jerry says his land has been destroyed, water polluted, and hunting not what it once was.
Long ago was our happy days. When they take the gas out, the gas itself goes up in the air and it comes down, polluted the whole country.
I'm wondering now, with all of these gas companies that want to come in and do more, what do you think of that?
I know for a fact that we'll be involved in every step of that permanent process. We have a say.
That tug-of-war between the environment and the economy puts Blueberry River First Nations, a small community of 550, in a tough spot. This is Blueberry River First Nations. CBC mapped all the active wells in the region, called the Montney. Thousands more are planned for development. If it's all extracted and burned, it's over 13 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions. That's about 19 times Canada's annual emissions.
In the midst of a climate emergency, industry players and governments are planning on setting up these huge new fossil fuel projects.
Kjell Kuhne is a researcher in Germany. He, among others, calls projects with such high levels of emissions carbon bombs.
This is the global map of carbon bombs.
This is his doomsday map. Billions of tons of emissions from Russia, China, the United States, and a potential 39 billion from Canada, with Montney the biggest of all.
Focusing on these carbon bombs allows you to focus on the places where the climate emergency is created and figuring out ways to slow it down. We are still in time to stop that from happening.
We need to be looking at this as a global perspective.
But MLA for the region, Dan Davies, says the world needs this gas.
India, China, other countries that absolutely rely on this energy are going to go somewhere else for it.
I mean, the experts say we got a decade to shut this thing down. Do you recognize that there's a certain urgency here in terms of the timeline?
Absolutely, there's urgency. To say stop in 10 years, that's unrealistic. We are not there as a country. We're not there as a society. Are we going to meet our climate goals? I don't know. I don't know if we can.
That's a lot of pressure on Blueberry River First Nations Chief Judy Desjardins.
And so pretty soon
She's watched industry profit from her land for decades.
Our people were overlooked, our standards were overlooked, there was no benefits to the nation.
After a court decision and a recent agreement with the province, Blueberry River has a say in where new development happens.
We're at a place where we are in the driver's seat and we can still restore our cultural and traditional values while working with industry, the government, and find that balance so that we can move forward.
It gives me hope for the future of my unborn grandchildren. I know we're going to work towards helping them to preserve what we have left today.
Moving forward, whatever this community decides, it will be on their own terms.
The CBC's Tara Carmen reporting. After a terrifying kidnapping in Mexico, 2 Americans are back home. The 2 others are dead. As Chris Reyes reports, it's believed they were caught up in a case of mistaken identity involving Mexico's notoriously violent drug trade.
They went into Mexico as a group of 4 friends. Only 2 have come home alive, escorted across the border by Mexican ambulance and army vehicles, one with serious injuries. This video appearing to show the violent moment when it all went wrong in a part of Mexico dominated by warring factions of a powerful drug cartel. Mexican authorities say the Americans were caught in a shootout, then kidnapped late last week, launching an extensive days-long rescue effort that ended today, when Mexico's president confirmed the Americans were found, 2 of them dead. Dashing hopes of this family member, who up until this morning wrote on Facebook she was keeping the faith that her brother was still alive. She wrote in a GoFundMe post that the 4 friends were going to Mexico for a tummy tuck when they were caught in the crossfire.
We want to see accountability for the violence that has been inflicted on these Americans that tragically led to the death of 2 of them.
U.S. officials want more information on exactly what happened.
I've been briefed by the FBI, which is working with Mexican authorities, and senior department officials are working closely with our counterparts at the State Department.
The kidnapping happened in the city of Matamoros, right across the border from Texas. Both the U.S. and Canada have high-risk travel advisories against going to that region. Ottawa warning citizens that clashes between cartels and gangs are common. Families of the victims have not come forward to share details.
U.S. officials are in touch with the families of the individuals, but again, we will respect their privacy regarding our conversations with them.
The 2 Americans who died are still in Mexico, where authorities say their bodies will be returned after their investigation. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
It is a massively popular sport in India, but there's a new crowd hitting the pitch there. After the break, we'll give you a peek at the country's all-women cricket league. Stick around.
You can see the love the Zhang family has for hockey as soon as you walk in the front door. It's in the many photos hanging on the wall, the framed newspaper clippings from past victories, and in the countless black dents in the garage door from years of practice wrist shots. It's a love that started as soon as Brian Zhang first stepped out onto the ice. He started his hockey career at 4 years old playing in Summerside. Now he's taking that love all the way to the Canada Games.
I just made that my goal, and now we're here, so it's a pretty great accomplishment.
He waited months to find out if he made the team. Finally, the roster was presented in a video, and there it was, his name.
I just watched the video with anticipation, and I was just super proud and happy that I made it.
Now, in addition to his practices with the Kensington U18 team, Brian is hitting the ice with Team PEI's men's hockey team. He's on the ice at least 4 days a week. He says his parents have supported him since the beginning, and it was a family team effort to get here. His parents are originally from China. His dad says when they first moved to PEI, hockey was a brand new sport to them.
I never played hockey before in China. I even cannot skate, right? I saw some people play hockey when he was young. I just put him, you just try new stuff. Every year he trying hard, and got this stage. Very difficult, but we're getting there.
Well, he done a lot, and we done a lot. I mean, it's not easy to get to the Canada game, that's for sure. All the early morning practice and the late night game, whatever, and dryland training. So, yeah. He's happy and we're happy.
His parents say Brian has been lucky to have supportive coaches and teammates who have helped him through his hockey career, a support that extended to the rest of the family as well.
The hockey community is really help our family to get into the island's life. We are so appreciate we get a chance to get into hockey. Sport is not only sport. Sport is like pretty much is our life. Sport help us to know more peoples, to understand more the cultures.
Now, many of those who helped Brian along the way will be able to cheer him on from the stands at home ice. He'll be playing one game at Summerside's Credit Union Place.
I've been playing on that ice for 10 years now, so it's going to be a pretty special opportunity.
Brittany Spencer, CBC News, Summerside.
Land Back is a CBC original podcast where we uncover land theft in Canada and look at how Indigenous people are taking it all back. Land Back is out now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Speculation is growing whether Prince Harry and Meghan Markle will attend his father's coronation. The last time the royal couple were spotted with King Charles was at the Queen's funeral last year. And as Thomas Dagley explains, whether or not the couple attends will have a big impact on what is talked about on Coronation Day.
Westminster Abbey has hosted coronations for nearly 1,000 years. So whether Prince Harry attends his father's big event in May is a matter of history. And 2 months out, it's still unresolved.
He wants both sons to be there because if there's not, it doesn't matter what Charles does, all the glamour, all the music, all the conversation will be that Harry isn't there.
Now named on the planned invite list for King Charles's coronation, Harry and his wife Meghan haven't yet said whether they'll show up. The most recent family turmoil stemming from the King's reported move to evict the couple from their home on the grounds of Windsor Castle. Though longtime royal writer Patricia Treble says that may be a function of Charles's cost-saving plans, not retribution.
They are there for a few days a year at most, and otherwise it's empty. And so you can kind of see it from his point of view, but the timing certainly is not helpful.
Drama erupted as soon as the couple quit royal life, then recorded that explosive Oprah interview, put out a detailed docuseries on Netflix, and since Harry released his best-selling tell-all.
I certainly don't see myself as a victim.
He's promoting the book with yet more talk of strained family relationships, this time in a live-streamed chat with Canadian author Gabor Mate.
I'm feeling more and more distant with my loved ones and my family.
In Jerusalem, sacred oil has been consecrated ahead of its use to anoint the king. It's an ancient ritual meant to symbolize the historical weight of the coronation. Indeed, tradition looms large amid a family drama that will soon be put front and center once again as the world watches. Thomas Dagg, CBC News, Toronto.
Amy Bell is back to tell us about the weather and remind us that we are, what is it, spring up and fall over backwards? What's
Spring
the phrase?
forward, fall back.
Thank you.
Yes, we're springing forward on
Dad,
Sunday.
you lied to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't all dads.
Yeah, a little bit on occasion.
It's all right.
Yeah,
Comes from the
it's
heart.
absolutely true. Parents, accept it. Kids, lean into it.
It's okay.
Yeah, totally.
Yes. So this means
Mhm.
we're going to see lighter skies after dinner, but we're going to go back to some darker mornings for the next little bit. But we're through those darker days of winter and we're heading into brighter days. So let's keep that in mind, especially when it's raining this weekend. For the next couple of days, we're actually not too bad. We do have a small snowfall warning for the Central Coast inland sections. Could see about 5 to 10 centimeters overnight. But for the next 24 hours, things actually really calm down. We do have a chance of some overnight showers here in Metro Vancouver and tomorrow afternoon out through the Fraser Valley. But the main event not arriving for a couple of of days. So as it spins off the coast, we are looking at clearer skies for tomorrow, at least for many areas, especially for the inland sections, the interior, the Kootenays, even the Peace region. We will see some rain and snow mixed for the Whistler area. Of course, that's in the village. You will see more snow up in the mountains. Nanaimo, you'll see that rain earlier in the day. Same story for Comox. Pretty socked in, though, for Tofino, unfortunately. You'll be dealing with showers on and off throughout the day, but sunny and quite warm in Victoria, high of 9 degrees. We're looking at those showers arriving tomorrow afternoon, late afternoon, I would say, for the Fraser Valley, high of 9 degrees as well. Taking a look at Dease Lake, so way up north, we're looking at -2 with a mix of sun and clouds. Same story for Prince Rupert. You'll hit 6 degrees. Chilly for Prince Rupert, -3, but looking gorgeous in the Williams Lake area. The Kootenays just hitting the 0 mark in the Cranbrook area. We will still see some shower activity for Port Hardy. But yes, just that snowfall warning for tonight for the Central Coast, just for the inland sections. For tomorrow, we'll see those showers arriving overnight. Tomorrow, though, we'll get up to about 9 degrees, so very similar pattern as we saw this morning with heavier cloud in the morning, brightens out, and we get a nice afternoon, dropping to 2 overnight. Thursday is a great one, up to about 11 degrees inland, sunny. We drop down to 4 overnight with increasing cloud, and then Friday we head into this new system that brings us rain and much cooler temperatures. Lots of showers for Saturday, Sunday, and early into next week at least, too.
So Thursday's the patio day, just to remind you.
Yeah,
okay, all right. TGIT.
Soak it up.
All right. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Cricket is one of the world's most popular sports, and many of its fans are women. Now they have something else to cheer about. As Salima Shivji explains, India now has its first women's professional league.
I'm at this giant stadium here in Mumbai, where it is the first match of a brand new league here in India, women's cricket, and the excitement among fans is palpable.
It's very special because first time it's women are playing IPL.
Wherever the women's team go, they are really, people are backing them.
Ecstatic, in disbelief, very proud. We're actually very, very lucky to be a generation to be witnessing this kind, because we know so many sportswomen who have fought for this.
It's been called a game changer for the sport, for the female players and for fans. And it's already one of the most lucrative women's leagues in the world. And that's before the first ball was even bowled. Because of selling of the team franchises as well as the sale of media rights, this league is making a whole lot of money, but it's also causing a lot of young female cricket players to dream big.
Our own inspiration playing in front of us, and it makes us feel so good that we even ourselves are going to play once.
It will promote more young kids towards the sport, and will get there is a platform for women's cricket.
The 5 teams have a tight playing window, only 3 weeks, but weeks where everyone will be watching to see how well this league does and whether it will become a model for other cricket-mad countries to follow. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
A disappointing and very public setback today for Japan's space program.
Main engine start. Solid boosters ignition and liftoff.
15 minutes after launching its new H-3 rocket, officials blew it up. They made the decision after one of the engines failed to ignite. This was the second failed attempt at liftoff for a project that has taken 9 years and cost more than $1 billion. It's seen as a major blow to Japan's aerospace industry. The British government is introducing legislation to stop migrant crossings on the English Channel. It would see those that arrive detained and deported swiftly. As the CBC's Abby Kuavasan explains, opposition politicians and rights groups are denouncing the plan.
The new legislation will mean anyone arriving by small boat will be banned from filing for asylum. They could be detained as well for up to 28 days without bail or judicial review. The policy will go into effect today, even though it may take months to be passed in Parliament.
They will not stop coming here until the world knows that if you enter Britain illegally, you will be detained and swiftly removed back to your country if it's safe, or to a safe country, a safe third country like Rwanda.
But some MPs are concerned it breaks a UN convention that allows refugees to seek protection in the UK. There is an issue of practicality too. The opposition says this new policy is unworkable.
The Home Secretary herself has admitted Rwanda is failing, and even if it gets going, it will only take a few hundred people. Now, she says she's going to detain them all, maybe for 28 days. She could tell us how many detention centres they will need and how much that will cost.
The UK has previously announced several measures to prevent boat crossings. It's paid French authorities to ramp up security in northern France. It's criminalized asylum seekers who arrive on British shores without permission. But these policies haven't stopped people from paying smugglers to cross the channel in flimsy inflatable boats or fishing vessels.
People risk their lives taking these journeys. But the way we do that is to offer safe legal routes. Currently, we don't have adequate safe legal routes, and that's what pushes people into small boats. Until we offer these people an alternative, the small boats will not stop.
The UK accepts fewer immigrants than countries like Germany, France, and Spain, but it's facing heavy backlogs. Of the 45,000 people who came to Britain by small boat last year, the Home Office has processed only 4% of them. More than 160,000 people are waiting for a decision. Abby Quadasin, CBC News, London.
Message in a bottle. And the 6 Canadian men who waited years for someone to respond. More on the encounter out of a pirate story coming up.
Getting in touch with themselves. Why is that important when it comes to their care, their cancer care?
People tell me that having gone through a cancer experience, they often lose touch with themselves, their own awareness.
Are you talking about physical touch?
Yeah, some of it's their physical touch because of what they've had to go through. So people sometimes say to me that they have a pretty fragmented self, and they've had to push down feelings and show a brave face. And so the expressive arts is a way to get back in touch with those feelings. What's the color of anger? What's the color of joy? What's the color of sadness? And doing this in a group, they're with other people who understand that experience.
The art is actually data in this study. People brought this art to the interviews where we gathered their stories and we asked them to share about the art. We take a piece of art out like this and say, what does it mean to you? How did you create it? Can you tell me about your process? And that became the data. And so that's a different type of research, but it's still really important for understanding how to develop this, how to implement it at other centers, and how to make it more meaningful for those that didn't engage quite to the same extent. I'm not coming in as a researcher with, I want to measure this in you, because I think this intervention is improving or decreasing that. That is really important research too. But to know what to measure even, we need to talk to people, to hear from them, what was this experience like for you? What impact did it have on your life? And then they'd bring the art out, and it was like the interview came alive. It was like going from black and white to color. And people just shared it from their heart. The interviews were long. They were just, even in the interview, you could tell the art was still bringing up really important thinking and feeling.
These pieces are pieces that are done with people who are using their own bodies to create an outline. And so they used color and imagery to talk about the brain fog in their head, because the medicines and the cancer experience can cause a fogginess in thoughts. To talk about the pins and needles sensation on their hands and their feet that is part of the side effects that some people get from the medicines. Everybody has some suffering, and everybody has some meaning that they make attached to that, so they can have some hope and some healing and move on with their lives.
An ancient seafaring tradition has united a crew of Canadian fishermen with an American tourist in the Bahamas. 6 men returning from a stint at sea set this bottle adrift off the coast of Nova Scotia 6.5 years ago. They each wrote their name on a note tucked inside, and last week the bottle washed ashore in the Bahamas. The U.S. tourist who found it used Facebook to track the sailors down. They were impressed their bottle arrived intact. Sailors and scientists have been sending messages in bottles for thousands of years. And by some counts, 1 in 300,000 washed up bottles will contain a message. Maybe like, send more chips. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this show on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube, Instagram, and our website, cbc.ca/BC. Michelle Gassoub will have your late local news at 11 o'clock right after the National. So please tune in before you turn in. Good night.